Derek, my brother-in-law, raised his champagne glass at our family Christmas dinner, his voice booming across the dining room. Here's to easy money, folks. I'm flipping the old family beach house come spring. Should net us a cool 300 grand profit. Everyone cheered while I quietly cut my prime rib, fighting back a smile. Derek had no clue I'd purchased that Outer Banks property 4 years ago, when Dad almost lost it to medical debt. He also didn't know contractor Tony Ricci was pacing furiously in my driveway right now, clutching forged renovation contracts. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut as Derek continued his boastful toast. 4 years ago, when Dad was drowning in cancer treatment bills, that insurance wouldn't cover. I watched my family's world crumble. The beach house in Duck, North Carolina, had been in our family for 3 generations. Grandpa built it with his own hands after World War II, and it held every precious childhood memory we had. Dad never said anything directly, but I could see the foreclosure notices piling up on his kitchen counter. The medical bills from his chemotherapy treatments had reached $230,000. Mom was working double shifts at the hospital, and my sister Jessica was still in college. Nobody else could help. I was 28 then, working as a software developer for a tech startup in Charlotte. I'd been saving every penny for years, living in a tiny apartment and driving a beat-up Honda Civic. My entire life savings amounted to about $50,000, plus another $120,000 in my 401k that I'd been building since college. The bank wanted $250,000 to clear the debt and avoid foreclosure. I knew what I had to do. I'll never forget walking into First National Bank that Tuesday morning in March. The loan officer, a stern woman named Patricia Wright, laid out all the paperwork. I liquidated everything. My savings, my retirement fund, even the small investment account my grandfather left me. The early withdrawal penalties ate up another $15,000, but I didn't care. "You're sure about this, son?" Patricia asked, looking concerned. "This is your entire financial future." "It's my family's future," I told her. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was the lie I had to tell afterward. When Dad called to say the bank had mysteriously restructured his loan and the house was safe, I pretended to be surprised and happy for him. I couldn't let him know the truth. His pride was already shattered from the medical debt, and learning that his youngest son had to bail him out would have destroyed him completely. So for 4 years, I'd been quietly paying the property taxes, homeowners insurance, and maintenance costs. When Hurricane Florence damaged the roof 2 years ago, I hired contractors and told Dad the insurance covered everything. When the septic system needed replacing last summer, I drove down from Charlotte and handled it personally while the family was away on vacation. Derek knew none of this. He'd married my sister 3 years ago, right around the time Dad was finally getting back on his feet health-wise. Derek was a smooth talker who sold insurance and always had some get-rich-quick scheme brewing. He'd convinced himself that he was the man of the family, now the one who made the tough decisions. Watching him wave his champagne glass around, talking about flipping our family property, made my blood boil. But what really got to me was the way everyone was looking at him with admiration. Dad was nodding approvingly. Mom was smiling proudly. Even Jessica was gazing at her husband like he was some kind of business genius. The beach house market is absolutely on fire right now. Derek continued loosening his tie as he warmed to his subject. I've already talked to 3 different real estate agents. They're telling me we can easily get $550,000 for that property as is. Maybe more if we put a little work into it first. I nearly choked on my wine. $550,000. The house was nice, but it wasn't worth anywhere near that much. I'd had it appraised just 6 months ago for insurance purposes, and it came in at $380,000. That seems pretty optimistic, I said carefully, trying not to reveal too much. Derek's eyes flashed with irritation. "Matt, buddy, I know you mean well, but I've been in sales for 15 years. I know how to read a market. Trust me on this one." The patronizing tone made my jaw clench. Derek was only 2 years older than me, but he always talked to me like I was a naive kid who didn't understand the real world. What he didn't understand was that I'd been protecting this family's real world while he was busy selling insurance policies and dreaming up investment schemes. "When are you planning to start this project?" Dad asked, and I could hear the worry creeping into his voice. "Well, that's the beautiful part," Derek said, refilling his glass. "I've already got everything lined up. Real estate agent is ready to list it, and I've got a contractor standing by to handle any improvements we need. We could have this thing sold and closed by Easter." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message from Tony Ricci, the contractor who'd been working on my house in Charlotte for the past month. "Where are you? We need to talk about those beach house contracts right now. Something's not right here." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What contracts? I hadn't hired Tony to work on the beach house. But clearly, someone had. I excused myself from the dinner table and stepped outside into the crisp December evening. Tony's red pickup truck was indeed parked in my driveway, and I could see his silhouette pacing back and forth in the cab. As I walked toward his truck, pieces of a very ugly puzzle started falling into place in my mind. Tony rolled down his window as I approached, and I could see fury written all across his weathered face. He was a good man, a third-generation contractor who'd built half the new homes in Charlotte over the past 20 years. Seeing him this angry was like watching a calm lake suddenly turn into a hurricane. "Matt, what the hell is going on with your family's beach house?" he demanded, waving a thick manila folder. "I've got contracts here that don't make any damn sense." I climbed into the passenger seat of his truck, my mind racing. "What kind of contracts?" "Your brother-in-law Derek hired me 3 weeks ago for a complete renovation job. Kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, the works. Said the family wanted it done fast for a quick sale." Tony opened the folder and pulled out a stack of official-looking documents. "But when I tried to file the preliminary lien paperwork today, the courthouse told me these ownership documents are fake." My hands were shaking as I looked through the papers. There it was, Derek's signature on a power of attorney document, claiming to represent the family trust that owned the beach house. Except there was no family trust. And more importantly, Derek had no legal authority to hire anyone for anything related to that property. "Tony, how much work have you already done?" "That's the problem. I started Monday morning. My crew ripped out the entire kitchen, stripped both bathrooms down to the studs, and installed 800 square feet of new hardwood flooring. We're talking about $30,000 worth of work already completed." The number hit me like a brick. $30,000. I thought about Derek's confident demeanor at dinner, his talk of easy profits and quick sales. He was already spending money that wasn't his, using contractors he had no right to hire on property he didn't own. "Did he pay you anything up front?" $5,000 cash, Tony said grimly, which should have been my first warning sign. Who pays contractors in cash these days? But he had all the right paperwork, or so I thought. Power of attorney, property, deed, the whole 9 yards. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called Sandra Mills, the real estate agent, who'd helped me with my own house purchase 2 years earlier. "Sandra, it's Matt Johnson. Quick question. Do you know if anyone has listed a property in Duck, North Carolina recently? Beach house on Sandpiper Drive?" "Funny you should ask," Sandra replied. "I got a call yesterday from another agent asking about that exact address. Apparently, it's listed with 3 different agencies simultaneously, which is highly irregular. Someone named Derek Patterson is claiming to represent the owners." My blood ran cold. 3 different agencies. That meant Derek wasn't just planning to sell the house once. He was running some kind of multiple listing scam. "Sandra, can you find out if any deposits have been collected on that property? Let me make a few calls and get back to you." While we waited, Tony showed me more of Derek's paperwork. The forgeries were actually pretty sophisticated. Derek had created fake letterhead for a law firm that didn't exist, forged a judge's signature on a custody order for the property, and even manufactured a fake deed transfer document. Someone had put serious time and effort into making these documents look legitimate. "How long have you known Derek?" Tony asked. 3 years since he married my sister. But I'm starting to realize I don't know him at all. My phone rang. Sandra's voice was tight with concern when I answered. Matt, you need to know what I found out. That beach house has been listed by 3 different agencies in the past month. 2 potential buyers have already put down earnest money deposits of $15,000 each. And there's a closing scheduled for next Friday with a 3rd buyer who's already wired $25,000 to an escrow account. I felt sick. Derek had collected $55,000 from 3 different buyers for a house he didn't own, using fake documents and forged signatures. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was full-scale fraud. There's more, Sandra continued. I talked to the agent handling the Friday closing. The buyer is a retired couple from Pennsylvania who've been saving for 10 years to buy their dream beach house. They're planning to move down permanently after the purchase. Tony was watching my face as I absorbed this information. How bad is it? He asked when I hung up. Worse than I thought. Derek's not just trying to steal the house. He's running a con game that's about to destroy innocent people's lives. I thought about the elderly couple from Pennsylvania, probably lying awake at night with excitement about their new beach house. I thought about Tony's crew, who'd worked their asses off all week, thinking they were doing legitimate renovation work. I thought about my family inside the house, still toasting Derek's brilliant business acumen, completely unaware that their beloved son-in-law was a criminal. But mostly I thought about Derek sitting at my parents' dinner table 20 minutes ago, accepting their praise and admiration, while planning to disappear with $60,000 in stolen money. That's when I realized something had to be done. Not just to stop Derek's fraud, but to protect everyone he was about to destroy. The time for keeping family secrets was over. Tony, I need to tell you something about that beach house. And then, I'm going to need your help to stop a very dangerous man. Tony's expression shifted from anger to confusion as I began explaining the real ownership of the beach house. When I finished telling him about my secret purchase 4 years ago, he sat in stunned silence for nearly a minute. So you're telling me Derek hired me to renovate a house that you actually own, but that your family thinks still belongs to your father, and Derek is using fake documents to sell it to multiple buyers? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Tony rubbed his forehead with both hands. Matt, I've been in construction for 25 years, and I've seen some crazy family disputes over property. But this is criminal fraud on a massive scale. I showed him the real property deed on my phone, the one that clearly listed me as the sole owner of the beach house. Then, I showed him the tax payment receipts, the insurance policies, the maintenance records, everything that proved my legitimate ownership. The question is, what do we do now? I asked. Tony's face hardened. What we do now is make sure Derek Patterson doesn't steal another penny from anyone. But first, I need to know, are you going to cover the $30,000 my crew already put into that house? It was a fair question. Tony's workers had been operating in good faith, doing quality work based on what they believed were legitimate contracts. They didn't deserve to lose money because of Derek's fraud. Absolutely, I told him. In fact, I'd like you to finish the renovation properly. The house could use the updates, and you clearly do excellent work. But first, we need to stop Derek before he disappears with all that stolen money. Tony nodded approvingly. All right then, what's the plan? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Derek himself. Hey Matt, can you meet me at the beach house tomorrow morning? Need to discuss some family business. 9 a.m. sharp. I showed the message to Tony, who snorted with disgust. He's probably planning to clean out anything valuable before he disappears. Family heirlooms, furniture, anything he can sell quickly. That hadn't occurred to me, but it made perfect sense. The beach house was full of antiques that had been in our family for decades. Grandpa's handmade dining table, Grandma's china cabinet, Dad's collection of vintage fishing equipment. Derek could probably get $20,000 or $30,000 for all of that at the right auction houses. We need to get down there tonight, I said, before Derek has a chance to steal anything else. Tony started his truck. I'll follow you down. And Matt. You might want to bring copies of all your ownership documents. Something tells me we're going to need them. The drive to the Outer Banks took about 3.5 hours from Charlotte. Tony followed behind me in his pickup, while I tried to process everything that had happened. My phone kept buzzing with messages that I couldn't safely read while driving, but I could see enough to know that Derek's scam was getting more complicated by the hour. When we finally reached the beach house around midnight, I was shocked by what I found. Tony's crew had clearly been working fast and efficiently, but the house looked like a construction war zone. The kitchen was completely gutted with new cabinet frames installed, but no doors or countertops. Both bathrooms were stripped down to bare walls with new plumbing roughed in, but no fixtures. The beautiful new hardwood floors were covered with protective plastic, but I could see the quality of the work underneath. "Your crew does incredible work," I told Tony as we walked through the house with flashlights. "20 years of experience will do that," he replied. "But look at this." Tony led me to the master bedroom where I discovered something that made my stomach drop. Derek had been using the house as some kind of staging area for his fraud operation. There were 3 different cell phones charging on the nightstand, each with a different name taped to it: Derek Patterson, David Peterson, and Daniel Parks. A laptop computer was open on the bed, showing multiple email accounts and what looked like fake real estate listings. Most disturbing of all, there was a suitcase in the corner, packed with closed cash and what appeared to be fake identification documents. "He's planning to run," I said. Tony picked up one of the cell phones and scrolled through the recent calls. "Look at this. He's been juggling calls from all 3 real estate agents, 2 different escrow companies, and at least 4 potential buyers. This guy is running a full-time fraud operation." I opened the laptop and found Derek's email accounts. The level of deception was staggering. He'd created elaborate backstories for each potential buyer, told different lies to each real estate agent, and even forged documents from fake law firms to support his various stories. One email chain particularly caught my attention. Derek had been corresponding with a woman named Margaret Chen from Pennsylvania about the Friday closing. She was describing how she and her husband had sold their family home, liquidated their retirement accounts, and were driving down to North Carolina with their life savings to buy their dream beach house. "Tony read this email," I said. "These people are about to lose everything they have." Tony's face went white as he read Margaret's hopeful messages about starting their new life by the ocean. "We have to stop this. Tonight." That's when we heard the sound of car doors slamming outside. Through the front window, I could see headlights in the driveway. Derek had arrived early, and he wasn't alone. I counted at least 3 vehicles, and what sounded like multiple voices approaching the house. Tony grabbed my arm. "Back door, now." We slipped out through the rear of the house and circled around to get a better view of who Derek had brought with him. What I saw made my blood run cold. Derek was directing a group of men to start loading furniture and antiques from the house into a large moving truck. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the men was wearing what looked like a sheriff's deputy uniform, and he was carrying official-looking paperwork. Derek was planning to steal everything valuable from the house under the pretense of some kind of legal seizure. And from the way the uniformed man was acting, it was clear that Derek's fraud operation was even more sophisticated than we'd realized. I watched in disbelief as Derek handed the uniformed man a clipboard and pointed toward the house. They were moving with the confidence of people who believed they had every legal right to be there. Tony and I crouched behind his pickup truck, trying to figure out our next move. "That's not a real deputy," Tony whispered. "Look at his uniform. The patches are all wrong and he's wearing sneakers instead of regulation boots." Derek was directing the moving crew to load Grandpa's dining table onto their truck. Seeing our family heirlooms being treated like common merchandise made me want to charge across the yard and start throwing punches, but I forced myself to think strategically instead. "We need to document everything," I told Tony. "Start recording with your phone." While Tony captured video evidence of Derek's theft operation, I called 911. But when I tried to explain the situation to the dispatcher, I realized how complicated this was going to be. How do you quickly explain that your brother-in-law is stealing furniture from a house that your family thinks he owns, but that you actually purchased in secret 4 years ago? Sir, are you the property owner? The dispatcher asked. Yes, but it's complicated. The person taking the furniture believes he has legal authority, but his documents are forged. We'll send an officer to investigate, but this sounds like a civil dispute rather than a criminal matter. A civil dispute. That's exactly how Derek wanted this to look. By the time police arrived and sorted through all the fake paperwork, Derek would be long gone with everything valuable. My phone rang. It was Jessica. Matt, where are you? Derek says you threatened him at dinner and that you're trying to steal Dad's beach house through some kind of legal scam. My heart sank. Derek was already working on his next phase, turning my own family against me. Jess, that's not true. Derek is the one running a scam. I can prove it. Prove it, Matt. He showed us legal documents, court orders. He says you hired lawyers to challenge Dad's ownership, using some technicality about the medical bills. How could you do this to our family? I could hear other voices in the background. Derek had called an emergency family meeting at Dad's house, and everyone was there. Mom, Dad, Jessica, even our cousin Brian, who lived in Charlotte. Jessica listened to me carefully. Derek is lying to you. I've never hired any lawyers to challenge anything. In fact, I'm the one who saved the beach house 4 years ago when Dad was about to lose it to foreclosure. That's exactly what Derek said you'd claim. Jessica's voice was getting louder and more emotional. He warned us that you'd try to twist the truth and make yourself look like some kind of hero. The manipulation was brilliant, I had to admit. Derek had anticipated that I might eventually reveal my secret ownership, so he'd preemptively poisoned the family against me by framing my truth as a lie. Jess, meet me at Dad's house. Let me show everyone the real documents. Dad doesn't want to see you right now, Matt. He's heartbroken. He trusted you, and you betrayed that trust for money. The line went dead. My own sister, my own parents believed that I was the villain in this story. Derek had managed to flip the entire narrative in the span of a few hours. Tony had finished recording the theft operation and was looking at me with concern. Family trouble. Derek convinced them that I'm the one running the scam. They think I'm trying to steal the house from Dad. Well, we've got video evidence of Derek literally stealing furniture with fake legal papers. That should convince them. I wasn't so sure. Derek had clearly been planning this manipulation for a long time. He'd probably been planting seeds of doubt about my motives for weeks, or even months. That's when my phone buzzed with a group text message sent to the entire family. It was from Derek. Everyone needs to know the truth about Matt. He's been working with lawyers to challenge Dad's ownership of the beach house, claiming that Dad never properly transferred the property after his medical problems. Matt hired contractors to change the locks and is trying to physically seize the property tonight. I'm at the house right now with legal papers from the court, trying to protect our family's interests. Matt has threatened me and tried to intimidate me into dropping the family's legitimate claims. I never wanted it to come to this, but we need to involve law enforcement to protect Dad's rights. I stared at the message in amazement. Derek had just accused me of everything that he himself was actually doing. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror, where every truth was twisted into its opposite. But the most devastating part was the responses from my family. Dad, I'm so disappointed in you, Matthew. Mom, how could you do this to us? Cousin Brian always knew something was off about Matt's finances. Only Jessica didn't respond to the group text, but she called me directly. Matt, I'm filing a restraining order tomorrow morning to keep you away from the beach house, she said. Her voice was cold and distant, like I was talking to a stranger. Derek showed us bank records proving that you've been making secret payments on the property, trying to establish some kind of legal claim. The bank records. Derek had somehow gotten access to my private financial information. That meant his fraud operation was even more sophisticated than I'd realized. Jessica, those bank records prove that I saved the house, not that I'm trying to steal it. That's not how the lawyer explained it to us.
He says you've been trying to establish adverse possession through secret mortgage payments, which is a common scam that children run against elderly parents.
Derek had hired a lawyer, or at least he'd found someone willing to provide legal-sounding explanations for his twisted version of events. The web of lies was getting more complex by the hour. As I watched Derek's crew load the last of Grandpa's antiques into their truck, I realized that I was facing a choice. I could retreat, try to sort this out through official channels over the next several weeks, and hope that Derek didn't disappear with all the stolen money in the meantime. Or I could fight back immediately, even if it meant risking my relationships with my family. Derek's fake deputy was approaching our hiding spot, probably to search the area and make sure no witnesses were around. "Tony, how fast can you get your crew back here? What do you have in mind?" "Derek wants to play games with fake legal papers and pretend authority. Let's see how he handles the real thing." The next morning arrived gray and cold with a bitter wind blowing off the Atlantic Ocean. I'd spent the night in a motel room in Nag's Head, trying to figure out my next move while Tony drove back to Charlotte to gather his crew and some additional equipment. At 8:30 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside the beach house when Derek arrived with an even larger entourage than the night before. This time, he brought what appeared to be an official sheriff's deputy, a locksmith, and 3 men in business suits who looked like lawyers or court officials. Derek was clearly escalating his fraud to the next level. I watched from across the street as Derek directed the locksmith to change every lock on the house. He posted new, no trespassing signs with his name listed as the authorized representative. The fake deputy stood guard, while Derek's team systematically cataloged every remaining piece of furniture and equipment inside. When Derek spotted my car, he walked directly over and knocked on my window with what appeared to be official court documents. "Matt, buddy, I really didn't want it to come to this," he said through the glass. His tone was sympathetic, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "But you forced my hand with all these legal games." I rolled down the window. "What legal games, Derek?" "Don't play dumb with me. My attorney says you've been trying to establish some kind of ownership claim through fraudulent mortgage payments. The family's not going to stand for it." Derek waved the papers in front of my face. "This is a temporary restraining order from Judge William Harrison, giving me authority to secure the property until this dispute can be resolved in court." The documents looked impressive with official seals and legal language. But I'd learned to be skeptical of Derek's paperwork. "Mind if I take a closer look at those documents?" Derek hesitated for just a moment before handing them over. "Of course. Everything's completely legitimate." I studied the restraining order carefully. The formatting looked professional, and Judge William Harrison was indeed a real judge in the local court system. But something felt wrong about the language. It was too convenient, too perfectly tailored to Derek's specific situation. "Derek, this says the order was issued yesterday at 4 p.m. "That's right. Emergency hearing. The family petitioned the court for immediate protection." "But you were stealing furniture from the house at midnight last night. This order couldn't have authorized that activity." Derek's confident smile faltered slightly. "That was a separate legal action. Property preservation." I pulled out my phone and called the courthouse directly. While Derek watched nervously, I asked to speak with Judge Harrison's clerk. "I'm calling to verify a restraining order that was supposedly issued yesterday, in case number..." I read the case number from Derek's document. After a few minutes on hold, the clerk came back on the line. "Sir, we have no record of that case number, and Judge Harrison was in depositions all day yesterday. He didn't hear any emergency motions." I looked up at Derek, whose face had gone pale. "The clerk says this order was never issued." "That's impossible. There must be some administrative delay in their record-keeping." But Derek was already backing away from my car, and I could see his fake deputy moving closer. The man's uniform looked even more obviously fake in daylight. The badge was plastic, the patches were sewn on crooked, and he was carrying what appeared to be a toy gun. "Derek, who is that guy supposed to be?" "Deputy Martin with the Dare County Sheriff's Office." I called 911 again, this time specifically requesting a real deputy to verify the identity of Derek's supposed law enforcement officer. While we waited, Derek became increasingly agitated. "Matt, you're making a huge mistake here. This is going to destroy our family." "Derek, you're the one who's destroying our family, with lies and fraud and theft. I'm protecting our family. You're the one trying to steal Dad's house." Derek was getting louder and more emotional, which attracted the attention of several neighbors who had come out to see what was happening. Mrs. Henderson from next door approached with her morning coffee. "Everything all right here, boys?" "Ma'am, there's a property dispute," Derek said, immediately switching to his smooth salesman persona. "This gentleman is trying to claim ownership of our family beach house through some kind of legal technicality." Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "But Matt's owned that house for years. He's been taking care of it since his father got sick." Derek's face went bright red. "Ma'am, I think you're confused about the ownership situation." "No, dear. I'm not confused. Matt's been coming down here every month to handle maintenance, pay the yard service deal with the insurance adjusters. We've talked many times about how good it was that he saved the house when his family was having financial troubles." I could see Derek's entire narrative crumbling in real time. His fake deputy was looking increasingly uncomfortable, probably realizing that he'd gotten involved in something more serious than he'd bargained for. That's when Tony's convoy arrived. 3 pickup trucks pulled up to the house, and Tony climbed out with his full crew. But he hadn't just brought his regular workers. He'd also brought his brother-in-law Mike, who happened to be a real deputy with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, and his cousin Sarah, who worked as a paralegal for one of Charlotte's most prestigious law firms. "Derek Patterson," Mike called out, approaching with his hand resting casually on his service weapon. "I'd like to see some identification, and I'd like to know who authorized you to change the locks on this property." Derek looked around frantically, probably realizing that his elaborate fraud was about to collapse entirely. His fake deputy was already walking quickly toward his car, clearly wanting no part of whatever was about to happen next. "This is harassment," Derek shouted. "I have legal authority to secure this property." Sarah, Tony's paralegal cousin, stepped forward with a briefcase full of documents. "Mr. Patterson, I have the actual property deed tax records and insurance policies that show Matthew Johnson as the sole legal owner of this property. I also have evidence that the court order you've been displaying was forged, along with documentation of your attempts to sell this property to multiple buyers using fraudulent ownership claims." Derek's confident demeanor finally cracked completely. "You people don't understand what you're dealing with here. This is a family matter." "Actually," Mike said, "this appears to be a criminal matter. I'm placing you under arrest for fraud, forgery, and theft." As Mike began reading, "Derek his rights," Derek's entire crew scattered. The fake deputy was already halfway down the road. The locksmith was packing up his tools as fast as possible, and the men in business suits were claiming they'd been hired under false pretenses and had no idea about any illegal activity. But Derek wasn't finished yet. As Mike was putting handcuffs on him, Derek pulled out his phone and made one last call. "Jessica, they're arresting me. Matt brought a bunch of thugs to threaten me and steal the house. You need to call Dad right now and tell him that Matt is using violence to take over the property." Even in handcuffs, Derek was still trying to manipulate my family against me. Within 2 hours, my entire family had arrived at the beach house. Dad looked older and more frail than I'd ever seen him. Mom was crying quietly, and Jessica was pacing back and forth on the front porch. Her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to reach lawyers, bail bondsmen, and anyone else who might help Derek. The scene was chaotic. Derek was sitting in the back of Mike's patrol car, still insisting that he was the victim of some elaborate conspiracy. Tony's crew was documenting the damage to the house and cataloging all the furniture that had been loaded into Derek's truck. Sarah was organizing legal documents on the dining room table that Derek's people hadn't managed to steal. But the most heartbreaking part was watching my family struggle to understand what was happening. "I don't understand any of this," Dad said, sitting heavily in his old recliner. "Derek showed us court papers.
He had a deputy with him. How can Matt be the legal owner of our house? I knew this moment had to be handled carefully. My family's entire understanding of the past 4 years was about to be turned upside down, and they needed to hear the truth in a way that wouldn't destroy them. Dad, I need to show you something. I sat down next to him and pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd saved of all the original foreclosure notices from 4 years ago, the ones that Dad thought I'd never seen. These are the letters the bank sent you during your cancer treatment. You thought you kept them hidden, but I found them one day when I was helping Mom organize your medical paperwork. Dad's face crumpled as he recognized the documents. Matthew, I never wanted you to see those. I never wanted any of you to know how bad things got. I know, Dad, and I understood why you couldn't tell us. But I also couldn't let you lose Grandpa's house. I showed him the bank records from 4 years ago, documenting the wire transfer that had paid off his entire mortgage balance. Then, I showed him the deed transfer, the insurance policies, the tax payments, and 4 years' worth of maintenance receipts. You saved our house, Mom whispered, looking at the documents with amazement. I liquidated my entire 401k and savings account to pay off the mortgage. But I couldn't tell you about it because I knew it would hurt Dad's pride. So I let everyone believe the bank had restructured the loan. Jessica stopped pacing and stared at me. You've been paying for everything this whole time. The roof repairs, the septic system, the insurance, everything, for 4 years. But Derek said you were trying to steal the house from Dad. He showed us bank records proving you'd been making unauthorized payments. Sarah looked up from her documents. Those were the real bank records, but Derek was misrepresenting what they meant. Instead of showing that Matt was stealing from your father, they actually proved that Matt had been supporting your family in secret. Dad was crying now, not from sadness, but from a mixture of gratitude and shame. Son, why didn't you tell me? I would have found another way to handle the medical bills. There was no other way, Dad. And there was no point in hurting your pride when the problem was already solved. I wanted you to focus on getting healthy, not on worrying about money. That's when Tony's brother-in-law, Mike, walked over with his investigation notes. Folks, I need to explain what Derek Patterson has actually been doing because it's a lot worse than a simple family dispute. Mike laid out the evidence that Tony and I had gathered over the past 24 hours. Derek had listed the beach house with 3 different real estate agents, using forged power of attorney documents to claim he represented the family. He'd collected earnest money deposits totaling $55,000 from 3 different buyers, all of whom believed they were purchasing the property legitimately. But that's not all, Mike continued. We found evidence that Derek has been running similar scams in other states. Fake real estate transactions, forged legal documents, identity theft. This appears to be his full-time occupation. Jessica sat down hard in one of the remaining chairs. You're saying my husband is a professional con artist? Ma'am, that appears to be the case. And based on what we've found in his hotel room and storage unit, he's been planning to disappear with all the stolen money sometime this week. Sarah pulled out another folder of documents. We also found evidence that Derek has been planning this specific scam for almost a year. He researched your family's medical bills, your father's cancer treatment, and the property records going back decades. This wasn't a spontaneous crime of opportunity. This was a carefully planned operation. The realization hit Jessica like a physical blow. He married me to get access to our family. It appears that way, yes. Mom was the first to speak after several minutes of stunned silence. Matthew, we owe you an enormous apology. We believed Derek's lies instead of trusting our own son. You don't owe me anything, I said. Derek is a professional manipulator. He knew exactly what to say to turn you against me. Dad struggled to his feet and walked over to where I was sitting. Son, I need you to know something. The shame I felt about losing the house was nothing compared to the shame I feel right now about doubting you. You saved our family, and instead of thanking you, we accused you of betraying us. Dad, that's exactly why I never told you in the first place. I knew you'd feel guilty about accepting help. But keeping it secret allowed Derek to twist the truth against you. That was the hard lesson we were all learning. Sometimes protecting people from difficult truths just creates space for more dangerous lies to take root. Over the next hour, we worked together to understand the full scope of Derek's fraud. Tony explained how Derek had hired his crew under false pretenses, using forged documents and fake identification. Sarah outlined the legal steps we'd need to take to recover the stolen money and protect the 3 innocent families who thought they were buying the house. Mike described the criminal charges Derek would be facing, which could result in 10 to 15 years in prison. But the most important conversation was between me and my family. From now on, no more secrets, Dad said. If we're going to be a family, we need to trust each other with the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it hurts our pride, Mom added. Jessica was still struggling to process everything. I need to know, Matt, are you going to file for divorce on my behalf? Because I clearly can't trust my own judgment about anything anymore. It was a heartbreaking question, but an important one. Jessica had been completely deceived by Derek, manipulated into believing lies about her own family. How do you rebuild trust after something like that? Derek fooled everyone. He's a professional at this. Don't blame yourself for being a victim of his manipulation. But I accused my own brother of trying to steal from our father. I was ready to file a restraining order against you. How do I live with that? That's when Tony, who'd been quietly listening to our family conversation, offered some unexpected wisdom. Ma'am, I've seen a lot of families torn apart by financial stress and deception. The ones who survive are the ones who choose forgiveness over blame. Your brother chose to forgive your family's medical debt 4 years ago. Your parents chose to forgive each other for the shame and pride that created this mess. Maybe now, it's time for you to forgive yourself. It wasn't going to be easy, but Tony was right. We had a choice between letting Derek's manipulation destroy us permanently or choosing to rebuild our trust in each other. 3 months later, I was sitting in a courthouse in Raleigh, watching Derek Patterson get sentenced for multiple counts of fraud, forgery, theft, and impersonation of a law enforcement officer. The judge had just finished reading the victim impact statements from the 3 families Derek had scammed out of their earnest money deposits, including the retired couple from Pennsylvania who had almost lost their life savings. Mr. Patterson, Judge Rebecca Torres said, your crimes went far beyond simple financial fraud. You weaponized family relationships, manipulated people's trust, and caused emotional trauma that will take years to heal. The court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims totaling $87,000. Derek was led away in handcuffs, but not before he turned to glare at me one final time. Even after months of evidence testimony and legal proceedings, he still seemed to believe that I was somehow the villain in this story. Outside the courthouse, Tony was waiting with his latest progress photos of the beach house renovation. With Derek's theft prevented and the insurance money properly applied, we'd been able to complete the full restoration that Derek had started with forged contracts. The house looked better than it had in decades. When do you think your family will be ready to enjoy the place again? Tony asked. Actually, we're planning a big celebration dinner there next weekend. The whole family plus some of the people who helped us through this mess. Tony grinned, including a certain contractor and his crew. Especially a certain contractor and his crew. The past 3 months had been healing for all of us, but also transformative in ways I hadn't expected. Dad had insisted on setting up a repayment plan for the money I'd spent saving the house, even though I tried to tell him it wasn't necessary. Mom had started volunteering with a support group for families dealing with medical debt, helping other people navigate the financial challenges we'd faced. And Jessica had moved back in with our parents while she rebuilt her life after the divorce. But the biggest change was in how we communicated with each other. No more secrets, no more protecting each other from difficult truths. When Dad's cancer markers showed some concerning changes last month, he told us immediately, instead of trying to handle it alone. When I was offered a promotion that would require relocating to Seattle, I discussed it openly with the family, instead of making the decision in isolation. The beach house itself had become a symbol of our new approach to family relationships. Instead of keeping it as my private property, I'd worked with a lawyer to establish a family trust that gave everyone equal say in how the house was used and maintained. Dad was listed as the primary trustee, which helped restore some of his sense of dignity and authority. We also used the house as a way to help other families going through similar struggles. Through Mom's support group, we'd hosted 3 different families who needed a place to stay while dealing with medical crises and financial stress. Grandpa's old house was being used to provide the same kind of help for others that I'd tried to provide for our family. The weekend celebration dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Tony and his crew joined us, along with Sarah, the paralegal, Mike the deputy, and even Mrs. Henderson from next door. We gathered around Grandpa's dining table, which Derek had tried to steal, but which now held a feast prepared by 3 generations of our family. Dad stood up to make a toast, something he hadn't done since before his cancer diagnosis. 4 years ago, when I was at my lowest point, my son Matthew made a choice to put our family's welfare ahead of his own financial future. He saved our house, protected my pride, and asked for nothing in return. But Matthew's generosity taught me something important about what it means to be a family. Dad's voice was getting emotional, but he continued, "Being a family isn't about protecting each other from hard truths. It's about facing hard truths together. It's not about maintaining pride at the expense of honesty. It's about building trust through transparency. And it's not about keeping our blessings to ourselves. It's about using our blessings to help others." Everyone raised their glasses, but Dad wasn't finished yet. Derek Patterson tried to destroy our family by turning us against each other. But in the end, his lies forced us to discover some important truths about ourselves. We're stronger now than we were before this crisis, and we're more committed to taking care of each other and our community. As we clinked glasses and began sharing the meal, I reflected on everything we'd learned over the past year. Derek's fraud had been devastating, but it had also revealed some important truths about trust communication and family loyalty. The most important lesson was about the difference between protecting people and enabling them. When I kept my financial rescue of the house secret, I thought I was protecting Dad's dignity. But what I was actually doing was creating space for someone like Derek to manipulate the situation with lies. True protection comes from empowering people with information and choices, not from shielding them from reality. I also learned that family loyalty isn't about blind support. When Jessica first accused me of trying to steal the house, I was hurt and angry. But I came to understand that her loyalty to Derek, even when it was misplaced, came from the same kind of commitment to family that had motivated my financial sacrifice. The problem wasn't her loyalty. It was Derek's manipulation of that loyalty. Most importantly, I learned that healing from betrayal requires choosing forgiveness over revenge. Derek had hurt all of us deeply, but dwelling on that hurt would only give him more power over our family's future. By choosing to focus on rebuilding trust with each other, we were able to move forward stronger than before. The evening was winding down when Jessica pulled me aside for a private conversation on the deck overlooking the ocean. "Matt, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Always." "Do you think I'm a fool for not seeing through Derek's lies sooner?" It was a question she'd asked me several times over the past few months, and I'd always tried to give her reassuring answers. But tonight, she seemed ready for a more honest response. Derek was a professional con artist who spent months studying our family and planning his manipulation. He didn't fool you because you're naive or stupid. He fooled you because he's an expert at finding people's emotional vulnerabilities and exploiting them. "But I should have trusted you over him. You're my brother." Derek understood that too. That's why his first move was to convince you that trusting me would mean betraying Dad. He created a false choice between family loyalties and then manipulated you into making the choice he wanted.
Jessica was quiet for several minutes, watching the waves crash against the shore.
I keep thinking about all the signs I ignored. The way Derek always had elaborate explanations for everything. The way he discouraged me from talking to you or Mom and Dad about his business plans. The way he always needed money quickly, but never wanted to explain why. Those are easy to see in retrospect. But when you're in the middle of a relationship with someone you trust, those same behaviors can seem like confidence, independence, and success. I guess what I'm really asking is, how do I trust my own judgment again? It was the hardest question she could have asked, because I didn't have a perfect answer. Derek's betrayal had shaken Jessica's confidence in her ability to read people and situations. How do you rebuild that kind of fundamental trust in yourself? Maybe the goal isn't to trust your judgment perfectly, I suggested. Maybe the goal is to build a family culture where we can share our doubts and concerns without fear of judgment. If you'd felt comfortable telling us about Derek's business schemes from the beginning, we might have been able to help you see the red flags sooner. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. No more secrets. No more secrets. As the evening ended and our guests began to leave, Tony pulled me aside one last time. Matt, I want you to know that working with your family over these past few months has been one of the most meaningful projects of my career. Not just the construction work, but being part of helping people rebuild trust and heal from trauma. Thank you for everything you did, Tony. We couldn't have stopped Derek without your help. You know what the real victory is here. It's not that Derek went to prison, and it's not that you got your money back. It's that your family came through this stronger and more connected than before. Tony was right. Derek had intended to destroy our family by turning us against each other. Instead, his scheme had forced us to discover how much we meant to each other and how much we were willing to sacrifice for each other's welfare. Standing on the deck of the beach house that night, watching my family clean up after our celebration dinner, I felt a sense of peace and gratitude that I hadn't experienced in years. We'd faced betrayal, fraud, and manipulation, but we'd emerged stronger and more united than before. Grandpa's house was safe. Dad's health was stable. Mom was helping other families avoid the financial struggles we'd faced. Jessica was rebuilding her life with the support of people who truly cared about her. And Derek Patterson was serving his prison sentence while we were learning to trust each other again. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone's pride and protecting their welfare? How did you handle it when family loyalty conflicted with family honesty? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe for more family drama stories, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the power of forgiveness and second chances. Thanks for listening, and remember that sometimes the strongest families are the ones who've learned to face hard truths together. Sweet dreams, everyone.